Hello everyone, my name is Amanda and I'm a librarian here at the South Cobb Regional Library. Today we are going to go ahead and make some really cute recycled paper bowls that are actually made with book pages on the inside of the bowls, which is a great way to share a message that you like or preserve your favorite books or just create a really interesting accent piece. And these crafts are great because you can make the bowls as rustic or as fancy as you'd like, just depending upon how much time you want to spend designing and planning your bowl. And I kept mine fairly rustic, but if I had put paper in a different pattern, it could have had some very interesting, fun patterns and effects. But I thought it'd be fun to just make these great accent bowls that are great for storing flour or jewelry or keys as we get started in the new year and try to reorganize our lives. So I will set these aside and we'll go ahead and look at the supplies that you need. So if you were able to get one of these kits from the South Cobb Regional Library, it contains most of the supplies that you will need. Inside the kit, you will find a guide that has a printed version of the instructions that we're going to go over in our video today. It also has some colored paper to put on the outside of your bowl. There are book pages. There are book pages to put on the inside of the bowl. A foam brush, a small bottle of podge, and lastly, a single balloon. And that will help you create the shape and the form for your bowl as we work on them. There's a few things that you will need to find around your house. Ideally, you will want to have some scissors and a marker. These will just make the process a lot easier of creating it and creating a nice finished shape if you want something that's not super rough and rustic around the edges. Additionally, you do need a small cup to mix your Mod Podge solution in, and lastly, you will want something to work on as you're creating your bowl. And I have a small paper bowl here. I believe on the guide it says to use a vase or a larger cup. Anything works. It'll just need to be something that'll keep your bowl relatively stable as you're working and allow the Mod Podge to drip down into that. Alright, with that, let's go ahead and get started. Alright everyone, I am ready to get started, and I went ahead and I blew up my balloon as I was getting everything set up. And so, you can see that I didn't blow it up to be super large. The supplies in your kit are only going to make a relatively small bowl, but that's okay. If you want to make a larger bowl, you can. You'll just need to provide some more supplies on your own. So the first thing you're going to want to do, now that you've blown up your balloon, is to decide where you want your bowl to be. So I want my bowl to be about this size here. So I am going to draw this line around my balloon. Doesn't have to be a perfect, we'll just know that this is at least how big we need the bowl to be. So, now that I have done that, I'm going to set my balloon here and move it off to the side. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to tear our book pages up into fairly small strips. They don't have to be perfect. It's important that you rip them because the rough edges clean up a little better than the cuts would if you did a straight cut with a pair of scissors. So I will do that and then I will come right back. Okay, I am back and I have ripped up a couple of my book pages into fairly small strips, and you'll note that they're not perfect shapes. Then that's okay because we can just mix it all together. So now we are going to go ahead and make our glue mixture. And in order to do that, you're going to just add some of the Mod Podge that you got and mix it into some water. And you can also add water to the Mod Podge. And depending upon how much water you have in your cup, you'll need a different amount of Mod Podge. You just kind of want it to look like a frothy milk mixture when you get done. So you want it to be definitely a little thicker than straight water, but not as thick as the Mod Podge would be by itself. And if you don't add enough, that's fine. You can always add more as you're working along. So we will bring back our balloon. And now you want to go ahead and make sure that you start by coating the balloon with the mixture, making sure you get at least all the way down to where you put your line. So I'm going to start here and work down to where my line is. Alright, and this will just help it to have a nice seal and have it look nice when it gets done, when you take the balloon out. Alright, so now that I've coated that, we can go ahead and we can start adding our book pages. So you're going to want to make sure you get it super wet. And you start with the balloon being wet, and then you put your book page down and you make sure it gets soaked through. And just repeat the process across your entire area down to slightly below where your line is. So I will go ahead and do that, and then we will come back. Okay, as you can see here, the first layer of book pages on my bowl has had a chance to dry. So I waited about 24 hours on mine, but you might not need to wait that long if you didn't use quite as much water in your Mod Podge. You just need to wait until you see like it looks like it's dry. So I'm going to start working on the second layer now. And it gets a little trickier with the second layer just because you can't tell quite as well where you have and haven't covered once everything starts getting really wet. But you want to be super careful to make sure you get everything covered. And to make sure you do that, I suggest just making sure everything overlaps a little bit as you're going along. And there's a few different tricks that I'll show you as we're working on this, just to make sure that you're getting the nicest, closest coverage on your balloon that you possibly can. So I'll go ahead and I'll get started and I'll show you those tricks as I get to them. So the first thing that I'm going to suggest is you start either at the top and work down, or at the bottom and work up. Either one works well. It just depends on your preference for whether you'd rather work up or work down. I'm just going to get this wet and we will keep going. And so what you noticed here when I tried to put this paper down like this is that the paper kind of has a natural tendency to curl in one direction. So if it doesn't look like it's curling in the direction that you want it to, you can just flip it over, and as you can tell there, it's sitting much flatter. So and before we even move on, I'm going to show you one more thing. So you can kind of see right here, it's not all the way flat. There's a little air pocket right there underneath. And so in order to deal with those pockets, I suggest you peel the paper up. You can make a small tear so that you can have it shift like this, and then when you lay it back down, you'll be able to recurve it into place around your tear. And so you can see here that I have a nice flat edge right there, and when it's as wet as this is, and when it dry, you'll barely be able to see that tear at all. And sometimes you'll need to do that on more than one side in order to get the best fit possible. So I'm going to keep working, and I'll come back when this is all done. Okay, so I have now added the second coat of the book paper strips across the balloon. And now the idea is just to let it dry once again. You can see that I have a lot of kind of spots around the balloon where it's sort of popping up. There's one here, let's see. And so for those, you want to just kind of carefully press them back down. You can let it dry part of the way and then add more water or add undiluted Mod Podge if you're having a major problem. If it's something where I can't easily smooth it down, I can do the trick where I rip a corner to allow it to fold over better, like we did along the top. And you might need to do that in a few different places just to get the whole project to carefully lay flat overall. But at this point, you can continue to adjust and shift as you need to. So you want to let this dry and then add a few more coats until you get it to be as thick as you want it to be. And if you're having pages that are shifting from one spot to another while you're working on it, don't worry about that too much at this point because the project will become more stable as you add more layers. Just shift them back in the right place and keep working. Hello everyone, I am back. It has been a little while and I've added a few more coats of the book sheets to the bowl. So when I press on it, you can see it's pretty firm. It doesn't give in on me. So what I'm going to do now is add my final coat on the outside with the solid colored book pages. And I'm going to do these just slightly differently than I did the other ones. You don't have to do it differently if you don't want to. You can use the same technique that you use for the first few layers. So I'm going to go ahead and move my Mod Podge and my bowl out of the way for right now. And I'm going to just go ahead and tear my sheets into small strips, and I'm actually going to do more of a square type shape rather than a rectangle this time. So I want to get a lot of strips that look sort of like that. So I'm going to keep at that. Okay, I have pretty much covered the entirety of my bowl, and so I will go ahead and let this dry most of the way, and then we will come back to review it, make sure everything looks good, and add the final sealant on it before it completely dries. Okay, it has been several hours since I put the paper pieces on for the last layer, and you can maybe tell that it's a little drier now. Still very wet, but it's a lot drier than it was before. And so at this point you want to just make sure that everything looks the way you want it to. If there are places that you've missed, I have a small spot right here. You can patch those up if you like, or you can just leave them there. You can also, if you have spots that aren't laying flat, flatten them out. This will be your last real chance to get that done. So what you can do now is, if you want it to have a smoother flat surface than you have right now, you can always add more water down Mod Podge and try to smooth that out a bit. If you're happy with how it looks though, you can go ahead and you can add your final layer of Mod Podge. We're not going to make it the milky texture that we had it before. You're just going to use a pure Mod Podge solution straight out of the bottle. You can put it into your cup again if you want to make it easier to do it that way, or you can just put it straight on the brush, and then we are going to brush that out. and try to get this to dry. Mine just developed a little bit of a problem. So I'm going to add my thick Mod Podge mixture and hope it looks okay, but if it doesn't, I might need to fix that a little bit tomorrow. And so what I'm going to do is just add straight Mod Podge straight into my cup. And I don't have any water in there right now. And then I'm going to use my brush and just smooth everything out and smooth it down. So I'll go ahead and do that. And I'll be right back. Okay, I have coated the entire bowl with a pretty thick coat of the straight Mod Podge, and I will let it dry. And then tomorrow we will be ready for it to be taken off. You may have noticed that I was having a little bit of trouble with mine peeling up as I was getting started, and that's because I didn't let it dry more. But I used more Mod Podge to get it to stick down, and hopefully it will dry okay. And if it doesn't, I can always get it wet again and reshape it out. But since it's sticking now, it should stick when it's dry, and we will be back tomorrow. It has been about 24 hours, and I let my bowl completely dry out. If I push on it, it's hard and it doesn't give. So I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the balloon. This isn't the easiest or most pleasant part of the process, but you just want to kind of put a small hole in your balloon and it will deflate. And you're going to carefully peel it all the way from the edges of your bowl. And if it sticks a little bit like it's doing here, that's fine. And if it even sticks on the inside, that's okay. You can just add a little bit more Mod Podge or add some water and smooth those edges back out. So I'll go ahead and do that. And we'll be right back. Okay, so here is my bowl, and right here along this inner edge, you can see a line, and that's where you said you wanted the bowl to stop. And so if you want now, what you can do is you can just take your scissors and cut along that edge to give your bowl a nice, neat top rim. If you don't want to do that, that's fine as well. If you haven't started your bowls yet and you plan to do that, you might want to not color with the marker, although it makes it a lot easier to know how much to cover for your first couple layers. But, all right, here you go. This is my finished bowl, and it's about the right size to use to store jewelry or keys, and just makes a nice accent touch. I kept mine fairly rustic and simple, but you can create all sorts of different gorgeous patterns, just depending upon what you want to do with it. Okay, everyone, that is it for how to make these really interesting paper bowls. Whether they're simple or complicated, I hope you'll share your results with the library on our social media platforms so that everyone can see what you're making, and I'll hope you'll come back next month, as well as come to some other library programs, and you can find information about all of that on our website, which is cobbcat.org. All right, I will head out, and you can make your bowl.